Well, Chad, last time I was having a bad hair day when I got onto this little podcast because Paul, Baloche has this beautiful hairdo. This time I'm like, I'm wearing a hat going with you, Chad. So,
So you can never go wrong. Well, it was so funny because I saw this clip of there's been a lot of Tom Brady, legendary football player in the
yeah,
news lately, but I saw this YouTube video of him getting a haircut, and he was talking about the same issues. Just put a hat on it. If
put a
it
hat
ain't
on.
working. So
There
if
we
he could
go.
do it, we could do it.
Yeah.
And even more importantly, I have worn, especially for today, my Alabama Crimson Tide hat because
Okay.
our guest is famously, been a part of the Muscle Shoals Alabama community for several years, and
Awesome.
representing the great state of Alabama so well, and one of our heroes. And man,
Yes.
I couldn't be more excited about having Lenny LeBlanc with us today, Ryan.
Lenny LeBlanc. If people just more people could know what a legend he is, and I really got a taste of that in our last episode, chatting with Paul. And just what a significant voice Lenny has been. So I'm really excited. I've never met him before, other than 1 minute ago. And I'm already get a sense that this is going to be an incredible conversation. So I think we should go into it. Lenny is standing by, and be prepared to be encouraged and moved and inspired. So here we go, the 90s Worship Podcast and Lenny LeBlanc. Lenny,
Hey
welcome
guys.
to our show. We're so glad to talk to you on your beautiful, clear iPhone 15 camera. I mean, you are in the times, man.
So
Chad
let's
half the
talk.
time is semi blurry, but you are bright and clear.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about hair today.
Yes, yes, I know. It's like you could have worn a hat, if you wanted to, and
Yeah,
you would have
and
fit
see,
in with this glove.
and I purposely didn't wear a hat because no, these guys wouldn't have hats on.
No, yeah, we do the hat thing some days. So, but hey, Alabama. So there you go. You're well
That's
represented.
right,
You must
man.
recognize the logo.
Oh yeah,
So that's
thanks,
good.
Chad.
Beautiful. Well, it's an honor to speak to you. I think I discovered how significant your voice is and your influence when we brought up your name to Paul in our last episode. Immediately, like he just started to well up in tears. It was a very distinct moment we had, and I just wanted to share that with you, that because Paul is someone that I know much more personally, and I know the impact he's had on my life. But I was asking Paul, could you share about some people that have had a real impact on your life? So I don't know. I mean, Paul, when he knew that we told him that we were going to interview the next day, and he's like, "Oh, Lenny, I got so many stories, so many emotions, so many feelings about that man," and so thank you for that. I would love for you to share a little, maybe, of your perspective, just to segue from Paul to you. Like, what do you remember about working with him?
Yeah. Well, Paul moved here in the early '80s, right after he got saved, and I was a pretty
Yeah,
new believer too. And um, actually, Kelly Willard moved here for a few years, and he moved with her and her husband actually. And so he started coming to the same church, and he wasn't writing songs or leading worship or any of that. He was just a great guitar player. He'd been to that guitar school out in California, and
yeah,
so I would take him on the road with me a lot. When I'd put a band together and do band dates, I would take
yeah,
Paul, and we just became great friends. I remember one time we were doing some prison ministry in North Carolina. I don't know if he shared this story, but uh, you'd have to lug the equipment like seemed like a half mile to get into the prison. And so,
yes,
for some reason, Paul came down with the chicken pox, and he
yes.
was he was really sick. I mean, he would lay out in the van just burning up with fever, and then we'd get everything set up, and we'd say, "Okay, bring him in." And
Yeah.
bless his heart, man, he was such a trooper. And then later he became an incredible songwriter, and and worship leader, and just had such an impact in the worship world. And I
Yes,
just,
he did.
it's an honor to call him a friend, and
Beautiful.
he's,
Okay, so true story though. We were asking him yesterday about the writing of the song Above All, and he describes the story of coming into your living room or something like that, and you said, well, so do you got any songs? And he
yeah,
pitches you some of his favorites, and you're like, do you got anything else? And that went on a couple of times. I just thought that's so grounding to kind of hear that. What do you remember
yeah.
about that kind of
Yeah,
moment?
you play ideas for each other when you're writing, and they were all great ideas, but I didn't really connect with any of them, and didn't
Yes.
see him actually working in that project. And so yeah, I did say that. I said, "You got anything else?" And that's when he played me. He played me the verse of "Above All," except for one line. I think in the last line in the verse, we changed it to "There's no way to measure what you're worth." I think he had something about the earth or something like that, and we changed that line.
Yeah.
And then, so I said, I really like that verse. And he said, I've tried to write a chorus to this song for 2 years, and I've actually written choruses and used them in my church, and I hate every one of them.
Aw.
And so we went to bed that night, and I'm an early riser, and I got up and just kind of got the idea for the chorus, and he was sleeping. And so then he got up, and finished another song that I had started. And I took him to the radio station to do an interview here in town. And we got back, we ate lunch, and I got back and I played my idea for the chorus, and I thought he was going to fall off his chair because
Mm.
it was so different than the verse.
Yeah.
Whoops, sorry about
Oh,
that.
that's all right.
It was so different than the verse because you think, the chorus is going to be glorious, magnificent, all these lofty terms you try to describe the Lord, but because in the verses it says you're above this, you're above that, and it's like, where do you go with the chorus? And I thought,
Yeah.
what if we just go the opposite direction? That
Yes.
he became a servant, he became as
Yeah.
nothing to the point where he was crucified. And when you're writing, you go through the song, you make changes, maybe a chord change or a melody change, and so we were kind of tightening things up. And every time we'd get to that line, like a rose trampled on the ground, we'd both start weeping. And this happened probably 10 times. We'd get to that line and we just like have come apart, like we say down
Hmm.
in Alabama. And I looked at Paul at one point and I said, Paul, I don't know when or by who, probably not me, but someone's going to record this song and it's going to go around the world. I just knew
Yeah.
it in my heart that day.
Yeah.
And it only took 3 years, but
Yeah.
Michael W. heard it because I recorded it on my album, but nobody bought my albums. So, it needed to be a bigger voice than mine. And thank God that Michael recorded it and gave it the platform, and it's gone around the world.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Such
touched
a.
touched.
It was incredible
Yeah,
story. Paul is saying he's sitting there watching television, and then he's watching this thing unfold, not knowing it
yeah,
was coming, and then suddenly Michael
right.
starts playing his song.
Yeah, it was
So
at
it's
George W.'s inaugural prayer service.
yeah,
Yeah, I had
beautiful.
gone to the store that morning, and I was coming back up the driveway, and the garage door was opening for me, and I thought that's weird. And my daughter was standing in the doorway. She was saying, "He's singing your song. He's singing your song." I said, "What song?
No
Who's singing?
way.
Who's singing what
Yeah,
song?" And I
yeah.
missed it. It was on C-SPAN, and I missed it. But I later watched it, and mine came out, and he had the words on a piece of paper. He came out and he actually messed the lyrics up because he had
Oh,
just learned it.
right.
It was wild.
These are the stories. I mean, how do you get these stories? But you just have, just to hear it right from
Yeah.
so wonderful.
And I've seen so many videos where every time he gets to that same line, he breaks down as well.
Really
Yeah.
beautiful.
So thank
Well,
God.
I have my own memories. The first time I sang that song, I think it must have been 1998 or 9. What was the year that it was written? When did it?
91.
91.
90,
Okay, so it didn't come to
no,
my world
99.
for
99.
Oh,
99.
99. Oh,
Yeah.
then there you go. So
Yeah.
so that was a significant It's the thing about these stories and people, and Chad and I certainly share in this, is like we remember where our lives were when these songs came in
Yeah,
and became a part of our like liturgy, a part of our
sure.
voice, right? And
Right.
everybody has a unique story of what they have. And I was 29 at the time and just finishing my first worship pastorate and leading at a
Wow.
community Easter Good Friday service, and brought that song to that church
Wow.
then. And yeah, lots of so many things, young kids, just new in ministry, all that kind of new worship leader, just experiencing this world. But now I look
Yeah.
back, 25 years ago, and it's amazing. So could
Well,
you maybe take us a little back in your own life, like before Paul, but who were the people that, like, how did you get into this, or who shaped your world? Who would you look to go, that guy or that service or that experience something shifted in you musically
well,
or spiritually, or what was that?
I got saved in '81, and I was a pop artist, so I came from that pop secular background, and so I went to this little church, and they were singing all day long. I've been with Jesus. It has been a wonderful day, and that was like really hip,
Yeah,
at that time. Now they were like camp meeting songs, and they were about God, but they really weren't songs like to God.
yeah,
And I thought, man, my friends are not going to like that. They're not going to be able to relate to this music. I was 31 years old. I thought, well, we need some songs that my generation can relate to. So I would just go to the church at night. My pastor gave me a key to the church, and I'd go there and sit at the piano and write songs. And that's kind of where my passion for worship began, was for my own local church and for my friends to make that connection with God. So
huh,
I didn't really know, there wasn't really a worship genre per
no,
se, and we were all of us in those early days were kind of feeling our way through the dark. We didn't know what we were doing really,
mm-hmm,
and so you know Kelly Willard was a great influence for me. All the guys at Maranatha were just a real blessing to me and a real encouragement. I did a record for them, and then a guy named Charlie LeBlanc. He's not related to me, but I produced his record. I had a little studio, and I would do custom projects on people sometimes. And he said, "Man, I'm gonna tell this guy Tom Brooks about you in St. Louis, where I live. He does all those Hosanna records." And so Tom started flying me up there to sing backgrounds on. Gosh, I've probably sung on three-quarters of all those Hosanna records that were put out at that
Lift
time,
him up.
all through the '90s. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. And so that's where I met Don Moen one night at Tom's house. And Don said, "Hey, we need to put you as worship leader on one of those records." And so they did, and man, Don and I began a friendship. And he was the head of the label, and eventually signed me as an artist. We did a couple of artist records and more worship records, and he was always in my corner. Like the accountant guys would come into a meeting, and Don would say, "Okay, we're going to do this record, we're going to do this record, and this one, and we're going to do another Lenny record." And the accountants would go, "No, we can't do another Lenny record. His last one lost money." And Don would go back into the office and bring out all the publishing statements. Like one of my records had a number one country hit on it from Sawyer Brown that I wrote called "Treat Her Right." And he said, "Look
yeah,
here, look at these checks that he made us. we're doing another Lenny record." And he
yeah,
always pulled from me. And I would go to him and say, "Don, let me go overseas with you. I'll sing background for you and just play acoustic guitar." I said, "I don't even have to sing any of my songs. I just want to go with you." And he always
wow,
thought I was just kidding. He didn't think I was serious. He said, "You can't sing background for me." And I said, "Yes, I want to do it." And finally, after about pestering him for about 3 years, he let me go with him. And man, we've gone around the world together. And he's one of my best friends. Him and his wife will
really,
come down and just spend the night with us, and we'll just hang out. Yeah, he's just become such a dear friend. He's like a brother to
yeah,
me.
yeah.
So he's been a huge influence on my life.
Dawn certainly is one of the legends. Chad, we need to have Dawn in
Oh,
this
for
show
real.
coming up. It's funny
You
as
need
we
to.
hear these stories. I'm thinking Kelly Willard, Dawn,
Yeah.
Dawn certainly, and others that we just need to. I want to know and hear from these people and see where they.
Don
Yeah,
Don's going to last. You're going to have 2 shows at least
yeah,
with
right.
Don.
Oh,
Yeah,
there's so
I mean, he's
much.
like
Yeah.
people don't realize the reach he has and the influence he's had in the nations. I mean,
yes,
we go to Africa, India, um, all through Asia, Philippines, Indonesia, and thousands of people show up. I mean, we'll go into a
wow,
city in India and 20,000 people show up.
really.
We filled our Neta Stadium in Manila twice in one day, and it seats 23,000 people. I mean, it's just amazing, and nobody really, he's not hugely known in the States, but
No,
overseas, it's unreal the reach. And he's like an ambassador for Christ. It's like, we'll go, we went to Uganda, and the president's wife picked us up at the airport. It's like,
of
he has,
Uganda. Wow.
yeah, yeah. And then like we go to Kenya and we have dinner with the vice president. It's like, it's just amazing the favor God's
Hmm.
given him.
Hmm. Well, could you break that down a little bit? Why, how is it that, let's be honest, let's see. How is it that a white guy from
Yeah,
America is able to
yeah,
break through that? And I think we need to hear from that because we're living in an era now where the whole racial tension
right.
and just whiteness is a
Hmm.
thing. But here's a guy who shows it can be done, that we can
Yeah.
build the bridge.
And
How does
I
he
would
do
get,
that?
I would get emails from India and Kenya and all through Africa, all through the 90s. Tons of emails from people saying, please come to India, please come to Africa. And I think it's because both of our styles are similar. They're kind of more soft, I guess. And their native worship is really like exciting. It's like really celebratory. They dance, but they don't have that. They don't write those intimate worship songs, and
Mm-hmm.
that's what they hungered for. And I think that's what made a way for him and made a way for me. I mean, I remember the first time I went to Kenya, we couldn't get out of the hotel lobby for an hour of taking pictures.
Wow.
And I remember earlier before that, years before that, this missionary group from here in town went and they brought back these pictures of taxi cabs with my name on them and my song titles and my face on the taxi cab in Nairobi. And I thought, how does that happen? And I think it's just that style of music they gravitated to, and it helped them make a connection in worship, you know,
Hmm.
that their native songs didn't. So that white guys, yeah.
Hmm.
I've been to so many towns in Africa and Nigeria, and they'll drop me off at the airport, and I'm the only white guy in the whole airport.
Hmm.
It's like
It's
crazy, but man,
it's baffling to me actually to think about it, but then just to hear you sharing the story and to know it can be done. That it's. I think I might be very edgy or risky in even bringing up this topic, but to think that we can overcome our whiteness or our blackness, or it doesn't need to actually be the
yeah,
barrier or the thing that.
yeah.
But I'm just intrigued as to what is it in the character of a person that can overcome the physical appearance and can help us bridge
I, I think
towards each other.
a lot of it is their culture. They're like where
Yeah,
we were culturally, 50 years ago, where they think we think things that we have championed and made like really popular that are wicked. They still consider them as wicked, and
yeah,
so they don't see color. They really don't. They're not racially motivated. And I think our culture is kind of just if devolved into just a horrible place. And I think our media, our social media, has really contributed to that. From
yeah.
people that make a living off dividing people.
Right, right.
And you don't see that over there.
Wow, wow. So good to hear that.
Yeah.
Really challenging and encouraging.
I keep praying that they'll send missionaries here.
Yeah,
You know, we
right.
we sent missionaries for so long there, but we need their missionaries to come here
Yeah,
because when they come here, they're shocked when they see
yeah,
some of the things that we champion. You know,
yeah,
but
yeah. And perhaps,
we just define stuff over here. We just redefine it
hmm,
to make it palatable. You know,
hmm,
instead of a pedophile, it's a minor attracted person.
right. Yeah,
Sounds a little nicer. You know,
yeah.
and it's just really sad.
I wonder if there's a role that we as worship leaders can play in helping to build those bridges and to overcome some of these kind of like racial barriers. Clearly, that's what Dawn has demonstrated, and you're demonstrating that as well. And so through music, and through the lyric, and I even like what you're saying, that you consider yourself to be a more, like, you're not always into all the hype songs. You're bringing the more just
Hmm.
the intimate, the song
Yeah.
"There's None Like You." If I think about that one, that's another one that you're so well known for. But that's a song that I just think, oh, my spirit's at rest when
Hmm.
I hear that song and sing that song. I don't feel like I have to perform that. I could just
Right.
settle into that.
Yeah, that's where I
Yeah.
make a real. That's where I really connect with the Lord is through songs like that that express what I'm feeling in my heart toward Him. You know, gratefulness and just awe. I'm in awe of Him, and so when I write,
Yeah.
that's the place I write from because I know my need and I see my my emptiness in a lot of places in my life,
Oh, we'll
that I
have to.
gravitate
Oh,
to.
yeah.
Sorry about that.
That's all right. Gotcha. Yeah, that's beautiful. Chad, why don't you just tell a little bit about how Lenny has found a place into the 90s worship docuseries and the album, maybe a little bit of the experience you had in recording with him, and even just your pursuit of his voice and stories in this 90s worship world that we're telling.
Yeah, absolutely. Excuse me. Um, well, kind of similar to story I told about first learning of Paul, yesterday, Ryan. First time I saw Lenny's name was actually on the revival at Brownsville, Hosanna music album, because I had just, as I was telling earlier, had just gotten involved in worship ministry at the age of 15 at the very beginning of the year 1996, and got immediately got kind of acclimated to what was going on with Lindell Cooley and the Brownsville worship, down at the revival. And yeah, I just remember getting the Revival at Brownsville album. And still, so funny, Lenny, because as we've been doing the docuseries the past couple of years, been listening to that album a lot, and I hadn't heard it for a while. Uh, before we started, this movement, but still, I just cannot believe how great that album is. Just for that to be in the analog
Oh,
era,
it's great.
it is just it
Yeah.
just holds up. It's just something so special about it. But kind of as a kid back, going back to 1996, and was just getting into music. I was really interested in the industry. I'm like, who produced this album? And I saw Liddy's name. And that just really always stuck with me. So I kind of followed everything from that point forward that Lenny was involved with. So when we kind of fast forward to 2021, when we started the whole process of capturing interviews and narratives for the 90s Worship Night docuseries, kind of made a list of potential episodes and who we wanted to talk to. And it was really fortunate because, as we were mentioning off camera, my good friend Jonathan Crone, who actually was co-executive producer and music producer for our Break Through the Stars album that we just released, which I'll talk about in a second. Uh, I had met him just through working in the music industry here in Nashville, but had remembered, it's like, oh my gosh, I think that's Lindell Cooley's music director over at the church. And I'm like, let me shoot him a text to see if
Right.
he'll help me talk to Lynn about kind of spearheading being one of the first interviews for this project. So he did. So that just kind of opened up that whole world of connections. And previous to that too, one of the first people that I connected with when we started the docuseries was Mike Coleman, founder of Integrity Music. So
Right.
kind of between Mike and Lindell, just the connections started coming together. And I had Lenny very high on the list. So was so blessed to have gotten connected with him. And then Lenny helped
Hmm.
with making some other connections as well. But for me, it all goes back to that album. I mean, that album was just so, you know, meant so much to me, and just learning from that, and just it's been fascinating to see who all was involved with Hosanna music at that time frame and all that's
Yeah.
happened, since then. So kind of
Mm-hmm.
the fast forward as we were putting together the Breakthrough the Stars album, I was like, man, we got to get Lenny on this project, because I, just as we were mentioning Don Moen, I loved all the stuff that on YouTube that Lenny and Don have done together the last few years. So we're kind of going for that, and Lenny came up with a brilliant medley of "There's None Like You" and "Above All," and just so proud that we're able to celebrate and
Mm-hmm.
put that on the album. So
Mm-hmm. So
So
good.
I've got a good story about Lindell. So
Okay.
Lindell
I would
grew
like
up
to.
Lindell grew up about 45 minutes from here, down in Belmont, Mississippi. And so when I was a new believer and I was leading worship at my church, we would do this pastors conference where we'd bring in, pastors from small churches, and we'd put them up and feed them, and have services every night. So Lindell's, him and his mom and dad would sing together, and so they would come up and be part of the service, and so after one of the services, um, Lindell came up to me. And he had a cream colored suit and a pink tie and big teased up hair. This would have been in the early '80s, and he said, "Hi, my name's Lindell Cooley, and I want to play in your band." I said, "You do?" I said, okay. So I went down to Red Bay a couple of days later and auditioned him, and then he was a phenomenal piano player. And I said, yeah, let's go on the road. And so I'll take him on the road with me. And he was my piano player for years. And
Wow.
so we go way back, and he's just one of my dearest friends. So yeah.
I was gonna ask, how do you produce an album where Lindell Cooley is leading it out? Because I'm just hearing, I don't know him yet. I want to get to know him, but he sounds like such a free spirit, like
Oh
like
gosh,
taming a wild horse.
it's
How do
just
you do that?
it's like herding cats. It's like,
Yes, I know, right?
but I mean, he's so anointed that like you just try
Yes,
to build everything around him, and just let him do his thing. And man, it's just he's got such an anointing on his life,
yes,
and he's just amazing. I love to hear him lead worship. I love to worship when he's
yes,
leading, because I mean,
yes,
I'm on his board at his church, and a lot of times we'll watch, the live feed, and we'll just, man, just be so and just caught up in the presence of God when he's leading, because there's
yes,
no time limit on him. He doesn't have a time. We got 19 minutes for worship and not a second more. That's not Lindell. It may go the whole service.
right.
And it's like, man, I long for that.
Yeah. I think I also
So,
heard there's no time limit, there's no charts, there's no worship practice. There's
oh
none
no,
of that. You just
no.
come up and it's like he decides what song he's singing right before
well, it
he
was definitely the
sings it.
Brownsville days.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like trains leaving the,
Right?
yeah. It's like the train's leaving the station, boys. You on board or not?
Yeah, yeah. It's like you're either a musician who can keep up here
Yeah,
or which is amazing to me. Um, it's because obviously, like, I'm in the world of charts and notes and music. I'm trying to like
right.
define every little,
Yeah,
nuance
right.
and notate it. But then at the same time, like I'm leading worship on Sunday. I've just been spending the last half an hour going over the charts, the notes, the chords. I was
Yeah,
on my piano here, I was working out some things, but then at the same time, I want to show up on Sunday and feel this freedom like I could
yeah,
go anywhere. It's not a
right.
reality that we all can share, because musically it takes, you know, a certain level of musician to be able to do that. But
yeah, and now
it's
most of the worship teams are on, we're on stems, and so we're
yes.
playing that click. I love click tracks, but sometimes I would pray at church when we were leading and I was playing bass or keys or something. I'd just pray the computer would shut down,
Right. Yeah.
so we could be a real band, and really go
Yeah.
somewhere, off the
Yeah,
chart.
totally. I am like that. Funny enough, we make multi-tracks available and sell them on
Yeah,
praise charts, but when I get to church on Sunday, I say I just want to click only, because what if I
right,
miss a measure? I don't want to
right.
be thinking about how to follow the multi-track. I just want to
Yeah.
follow the Lord, or follow the,
Hmm.
you know, whatever happened. And I also feel like I want to be the band that we are and not
Yeah.
be someone else. But now I'm not a very good salesman, because I'm downplaying our own products. So sorry
Yeah.
for my opinions, but
Yeah.
I
But
have
you
them.
can
So
do both. I think you could. There's room for
yeah,
both. But there are those times when, man, you just need to get off the page. You just need to go off the page and just start
yeah,
singing from your heart. Because that's where you make the real connection, I think, with God is, man, when you're just outside the box and you're just pouring your heart
yeah,
out to Him and you're singing your prayers, to Him. And I think that's when people actually make the connection too, because a lot of times, when we're on the grid, I look around and there's maybe 1 out of 10 people singing, and they're just all kind of standing there with their arms folded and just kind of
yeah.
watching the show, and that breaks my heart.
Right. Yeah. It's terrifying to go out into unknown space when you're standing in front of
Yeah,
400 people,
yeah,
and you have a band that's like, what's he doing? And you have a
yeah,
congregation that's like, and you're thinking, can I say something that I just thought in,
hmm,
that's terrifying. What if
yeah,
we play the wrong chord or something like that, Do
yeah.
you
God
do
might show
that?
up.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Do you do that yourself, or is that a part of your worship style? Maybe just walk us into that a little bit of how do you prepare a band to have some of that real time kind of sensitivity?
Sometimes I'll lead at Lindell's when he's gone, and those guys, they can flow with wherever I go.
Yeah,
I might just say a lyric, and it might be the end of the chorus, or it might be a chorus, so they'll know we're doing another chorus.
yeah, yeah,
And sometimes you just have a phrase come to your mind, and a few chords underneath it. You do it a few times, and they're latching onto it, and then they start doing it. And hopefully the congregation will start doing it. And so I look for those times, and when I get invited to churches now, I ask them. I said, well, "Is it okay if I just do it with my guitar and a vocal mic?" Because I think sometimes the band is distracting,
hmm,
and because that's what they do from week to week.
mm-hmm.
And they say, "Yeah, that'd be a nice change." So I love being able to do that because it gives you more freedom.
Yeah, yeah. I feel like that. Really good. Well, this has been super encouraging. Love the stories, and we just really appreciate and honor you, Lenny, for paving the way for, um, so much that we need to hear from and tap into as people leading worship. Feel like I want to tell these stories because I want the guys who are young in our 2020s and hearing all
Yeah,
these ultra produced worship bands, which are wonderful,
yeah,
but there is this simple, authentic, roots where we come from that I want to take people back to.
yeah.
And
It's all
you have
about it's
something to
all
say in
about
that.
it's all about making creating an atmosphere where people want to get connected. That's our job.
Yeah.
That to get them to make a connection with God, and that's always been my goal. I haven't always achieved it, but because I know that's what I need in my own life, and I know they need it too. So if I can be an encouragement to anybody,
Mm-hmm.
praise God, because most of the time I felt like I was a blind man in the dark. you know. you
Mm-hmm.
know. So
Beautiful. Well, thank you very much, Lenny. Thank you, Chad, again. And Lenny, I was supposed to say hi to you from Paul. I know we were talking to him before, but he was
All
like,
right.
definitely say hi from, he wants to connect with you again. So I'm
Yeah.
passing that forward. And we will take a few of the names you've given us. Kelly Willard, certainly Don Moan. Oh, we're chasing after Lindell Cooley, but it's like
He's
chasing a
he's
cat in
coming.
the forest,
Ryan, I got after he gets
so
back from vacation,
he's
he's
coming.
gonna be on there,
Yeah.
and we'll get Don.
Okay,
Don will
we
get
got
him.
that working. So stay
Yep.
tuned.
Oh,
I
yeah,
feel like
Don will be great.
this podcast is going to keep flowing because out of every interview, we'll connect to the next person. Is like, oh, we need to talk to that person.
Yeah, that's
So
great.
if we keep talking about people that influenced us back, we'll just keep going back and back and back in
Sure.
in ages. So,
Yeah.
anyways, grateful for you. Thank you for joining us. This is Ryan Dahl, Lenny LeBlanc, and Chad Gentry with the 90s Worship Podcast, and we're just going to keep telling these stories. So stay tuned. There'll be lots coming. God bless you all. See you then.